Emma's pulse quickened as she stared through the frosted glass door. The wolf's massive frame stood motionless, muscles taut beneath its weathered fur. This was no ordinary wildlife encounter. Wolves rarely approached human buildings, especially under the cover of dawn. Yet here he was, eyes locked on the clinic, as though pleading for something she couldn't yet understand. The air outside was crisp, heavy with the scent of pine and damp earth. A thin mist curled along the parking lot, blurring the line between forest and civilization. The wolf's breath plumed in steady clouds, visible even from Emma's position by the window. She had spent years treating hawks with broken wings, foxes struck by cars, and deer tangled in barbed wire. But never had a predator of this size and power arrived willingly at her doorstep. Her instincts screamed caution. Wolves were creatures of instinct, their presence near humans usually a sign of danger. Yet something in the animal's stance made her hesitate. There was no growl, no bristled fur. Instead, there was a strange patience, almost as if the wolf was waiting. Emma reached for the intercom and dialed her colleague, Dr. Thomas Hale, who was still half an hour away. Her voice shook despite her effort to steady it. "Thomas, you need to get here. Now, there's a wolf at the entrance, and he's not acting like a wolf should." While waiting, Emma studied the creature more closely. His fur was torn in patches, streaked with mud, as though he had crossed miles of unforgiving terrain. His golden eyes shifted not to her, but to the shadow that hovered just behind him. That's when Emma saw it, a smaller figure limping slowly into view. The sight knocked the air from her lungs. It was a pup, no more than a few months old, dragging its hind leg as though each step sent ripples of pain through its tiny body. Its ribs pressed sharply against its skin, and its trembling frame looked close to collapse. Emma's heart ached as the larger wolf nudged the pup gently forward with his muzzle. Every movement radiated urgency, but not aggression. This wasn't a wild beast staking territory. This was a desperate father guiding his wounded child to the only place he believed might help. Her training told her to stay calm, but the lump in her throat grew heavier by the second. Wolves were intelligent, yes, but to seek out a human clinic? To stand patiently at its door rather than vanish back into the forest? It defied everything she thought she knew. Emma pressed her palm against the glass, her eyes meeting the wolf's. And in that brief, chilling moment, she realized she wasn't just looking at an animal. She was witnessing something far greater. A father's love, fierce and unyielding, reaching across the invisible barrier between wild and human worlds. Emma's breath fogged the glass as she leaned closer, unable to tear her eyes from the strange pair. The pup staggered forward and collapsed against the clinic's entrance, its tiny body shaking with exhaustion. The larger wolf stepped back, lowering his head but keeping his eyes fixed on Emma, his message unmistakable. "Help my child." Her hands trembled as she fumbled with the security controls, silencing the alarm that still blared through the quiet morning. She had no protocol for this. Every textbook, every field lecture about predators insisted that wolves and humans were destined to avoid one another or clash. Yet here was a father wolf, making a choice no animal should have made, trusting the very species that had so often threatened his kind. Emma hesitated at the door, her stethoscope still hanging loosely around her neck. Should she open it? Would the wolf attack if she approached his pup? Her mind raced through scenarios, but her heart whispered something else, a pull she couldn't resist. She cracked the door open. The cold air rushed in, carrying the earthy musk of the wolves. The pup let out a faint whimper, so soft and fragile it cut through Emma's chest like a blade. Instinct took over. She crouched low, speaking softly as if her words might soothe the trembling creature. "It's okay. You're safe now. I've got you." The father wolf's ears twitched, his golden eyes narrowing. He shifted his weight forward, but stopped, hovering like a shadow of strength and restraint. He could end her life in seconds if he chose, yet he didn't move. He was watching, judging, deciding if she could be trusted. Emma slid her hands beneath the pup's frail body. The little one cried out, the sound raw and broken. Fresh blood stained her gloves. She gasped when she felt the jagged wound along its hind leg, deep and cruel. But what struck her hardest was not the injury itself. It was the pattern. The cut wasn't natural, not from a fall or a predator's bite. It was too clean, too deliberate. Her stomach churned. This wasn't the work of nature. This was man-made. As she carried the pup gently inside, Emma glanced back. The father wolf remained outside, muscles taut, his breath steaming in the cold air. He didn't follow, didn't challenge her. He only sat, his chest rising and falling heavily, as though waiting. Inside, the fluorescent lights illuminated the pup's condition with brutal clarity. Dried blood crusted its fur. Its eyes, glassy with pain, still flicked toward the door, searching for its father. Emma's throat tightened. Whatever had happened to this little one had nearly broken it, and yet it had survived. Her phone buzzed. Dr. Hale's voice was sharp on the other end. "I'm 10 minutes out. Don't do anything risky." But Emma was already working, cleaning the wound with practiced hands. As the water washed away dirt and blood, something metallic glinted beneath the fur. She froze. There, digging cruelly into the pup's leg, was a thin wire loop, a snare. The kind used by poachers. The sight made Emma's vision blur with rage. Someone had set this trap in the forest, careless of who might suffer, and this tiny pup had walked straight into it. Her hand shook as she examined the wire. It had been twisted, pulled at, nearly broken. But not by the pup. The markings told a different story, deep gouges, scratches, and bent metal that no small animal could have managed. Emma's breath caught in her throat as the realization struck her like a thunderclap. The father wolf had tried to free his child with his own teeth and claws, fighting desperately against the cruel trap. He had risked everything to give the pup even a chance to survive. A sob rose in her chest. This wasn't just an injured animal. This was a story of love, sacrifice, and trust beyond anything she had ever imagined. And it was only beginning. Emma's gloved hands trembled as she held the small leg steady beneath the unforgiving clinic lights. The wire bit deep into the pup's flesh, its cruel grip leaving raw grooves that oozed with every tiny movement. The pup whimpered, its soft body quaking, but Emma's heart broke most when she noticed how quietly it endured the pain, as if exhaustion had already stolen its strength to cry. She forced her focus back to the task. Step by step, careful, precise. Sterilize. Clean. Keep pressure. Yet no amount of training could stop the emotion clawing at her chest. This wasn't just a patient. This was a child, someone's child. The realization thundered through her again. The marks on the wire weren't from the pup's struggle. They were from the father's. The jagged dents, the twisted strands of metal. They told a story of desperation. She imagined him gnawing at the trap in the dark forest, blood from his own mouth mixing with the pup's, clawing and pulling with relentless force. He must have tried for hours, maybe days. Each failure must have gutted him, but he hadn't stopped. And when he couldn't finish the fight alone, he had done the unthinkable. He had brought his baby here to humans. Emma blinked rapidly, her vision swimming with tears. Outside the clinic, she knew the father wolf was still there, waiting. Every so often she glanced at the security monitor. His enormous figure sat motionless, eyes fixed on the door, chest rising in slow, measured breaths. He wasn't pacing, wasn't snarling. He was holding vigil. "Hold on, little one," she whispered, more to herself than the pup. "I won't let them take you." The clinic's door creaked open and Dr. Hale entered, his face pale with disbelief as his eyes locked on the monitor. "Good God, Emma, is that a wolf? And the pup, what happened?" Emma didn't look up. Her voice cracked. "Poachers. A snare. And look at this." She angled the twisted wire under the light. "These marks aren't from the pup. The father did this. He tried to free him." Dr. Hale stepped closer, his professional facade faltering. For a long moment, he simply stared at the small, trembling body on the table, then at Emma's tear-streaked face. Finally, he exhaled a long, heavy breath. Unbelievable. He trusted us after what humans did. Emma nodded, her throat too tight to speak. They worked quickly together, but every movement felt like a sacred ritual. Hale cut through the remaining wire with surgical precision while Emma steadied the pup. When the final piece of twisted metal clattered into the tray, Emma felt her breath release in a shaky gasp, as though she had freed something more than flesh. She had freed a story of love written in blood and steel. The pup's breathing steadied slightly as the cruel pressure eased. Emma washed the wound again, uncovering layers of damage. Infection had set in, but the tiny body still fought on, clinging stubbornly to life. She cleaned, stitched, bandaged, and administered antibiotics, every action carried by both training and the deep ache in her heart. Hale prepared pain medication, but his voice softened as he handed it over. I've treated wolves in the wild. They avoid us at all costs. But this is different. He came to us, Emma. He chose us. Emma swallowed hard, blinking back fresh tears. He chose to trust the same species that hurt his pup. Can you even imagine the courage that took? The pup whimpered softly as the sedative eased it into a fragile calm. Emma brushed its fur with gentle fingers, marveling at its resilience. Then she turned toward the monitor again. The father wolf hadn't moved. His body, enormous and battered, stood firm just outside the door. The way he watched, unblinking, steady, made her chest tighten. His entire being seemed to be balanced on a single hope, that the fragile life inside would return to him. And in that moment, Emma understood something that transcended science, training, or logic. This wasn't instinct. This wasn't a random act of survival. This was love, raw and desperate, driving a father to tear at metal with his teeth, to stand unarmed before humans, to risk everything he had ever known. Her tears slipped freely now, falling on her mask. She didn't care. She wanted this wolf to know, even if he couldn't understand her words, that his sacrifice had not been in vain. The pup's heartbeat steadied under her stethoscope, fragile but strong enough to cling to life. Relief flooded her veins, but alongside it came a new question. What if the damage was too deep? What if the pup never recovered fully? The thought hollowed her out. She wanted to promise the father wolf everything, but she couldn't. Not yet. She met Hale's eyes. We have to give him back as soon as possible. He won't leave without his pup. Hale nodded grimly. And I don't think he'd forgive us if we didn't. Emma turned again toward the monitor. The wolf's golden eyes burned into hers through the grainy feed. She raised a hand, pressing her palm to the glass screen as if reaching through it. For a fleeting second, she swore he understood. The pup stirred weakly on the table, its bandaged leg twitching as the sedative began to wear off. Emma leaned closer, her gloved hand hovering just above the tiny chest, feeling the fragile rhythm of its breaths. Each rise and fall was a small miracle, but her stomach clenched with worry. This little one had been trapped for days, and though the wire was gone, the battle for survival had only just begun. Dr. Hale removed his mask, his expression a mixture of exhaustion and awe. His vitals are stable, for now. But Emma, if infection spreads deeper, we'll be fighting against time. Emma nodded, but her gaze remained locked on the pup. He's fought this long. He'll keep fighting. Her voice cracked as she added, almost in a whisper, he has to. Through the wide front windows, the dawn had broken into full morning. Shafts of sunlight filtered across the misty clearing, illuminating the figure still waiting outside. The father wolf hadn't moved. He sat like a statue at the edge of the lot, head raised, chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. He hadn't approached the doors, hadn't retreated into the forest. He was a sentinel bound by devotion, watching and waiting with the kind of patience born only from love. Other staff members had arrived by now, murmuring in disbelief as they gathered behind Emma. None of them had seen anything like this before. Predators usually fled at the first sign of humans, yet this wolf's presence was deliberate, unwavering. Should we call wildlife control? One of the younger interns whispered nervously. No, Emma said sharply, turning toward her. This isn't a threat. He brought his pup here. He's trusting us. If we betray that trust, we'll lose more than just a wolf. We'll lose something extraordinary. Silence fell over the clinic. Every pair of eyes returned to the window. The wolf's gaze seemed to pierce straight through the glass, through their doubts, through their fear. Hours stretched slowly, marked only by the steady beep of monitors and the soft sounds of Emma's careful work. She cleaned and redressed the wounds, applied ointments, and checked the pup's breathing every few minutes. With each gentle touch, her tears threatened to rise again. She couldn't stop imagining the father outside, picturing the nights he had spent beside his trapped pup, licking the wound, clawing at the cruel wire until his own mouth bled. The image made her chest ache so deeply she had to pause more than once just to breathe. At last, the pup stirred more strongly, its tiny head lifting for the first time. Its eyes fluttered open, glazed but alive. Emma smiled behind her mask, her heart swelling with relief. "He's waking up," she whispered. The pup gave a faint whine, a sound that cut through the room and seemed to travel straight through the walls. And outside, as if answering the call, the father wolf rose to his feet. His ears pricked, his tail lowered but steady. He had heard. Emma swallowed the lump in her throat. He knows. The moment felt sacred, as though the walls of the clinic were no longer barriers, but part of a bridge between two worlds. By midday, the pup had regained enough strength to attempt a small movement. Emma and Hale exchanged glances. They both knew what had to happen next. The father wolf would not wait forever, nor would the pup heal without the comfort of its parent. The reunion couldn't be delayed. Emma prepared carefully, wrapping the pup in a thick blanket. She checked the bandages one final time, whispered soothing words, and steadied her trembling hands. Her colleagues watched silently as she carried the fragile bundle to the door. Every step felt heavier, weighted with responsibility. At the threshold, she hesitated. Her pulse thundered in her ears. This was the moment, one that could end in trust or in tragedy. She looked back at Hale, who gave her a small, steady nod. With a deep breath, Emma pushed the door open. The crisp air rushed in, carrying the scents of pine and earth. The father wolf stood only a few yards away now, his golden eyes locked on her every movement. Emma knelt slowly, placing the pup gently on the ground before stepping back, her palms open to show she had nothing more to give and nothing to hide. For a long, breathless moment, the world seemed to hold still. The pup whimpered softly, its tiny body shifting beneath the blanket. Then the father moved. He approached with a grace that belied his size, each step deliberate, cautious, but unhesitant. His gaze never wavered from Emma's face, as if measuring her soul. The distance between them shrank until his shadow fell across her. Emma froze, every instinct screaming at her to retreat, but she stayed. She owed him her trust as much as he had given hers. The wolf lowered his great head and nudged the blanket. A faint whine escaped his throat as he gently uncovered his pup. His nose brushed the bandages, sniffing carefully, as though checking every stitch, every mark of human intervention. For a fleeting instant, Emma feared he would recoil. But instead, he paused, then pressed his muzzle tenderly against the pup's head. Emma's eyes blurred with tears. She had never seen anything so pure, so unguarded. This wasn't just relief. It was recognition, gratitude, a father acknowledging that someone had helped when he no longer could. The pup responded with a weak but joyful yip, and the father licked its face with slow, deliberate strokes. The scene carved itself into Emma's memory, every detail etched like fire. The glint of sunlight on their fur, the soft whimper of reunion, the heavy silence of humans bearing witness. And then it happened. The father wolf lifted his head and looked directly at Emma. Their eyes locked. In his golden gaze, she saw no fear, no aggression, only something deeper, an understanding that shattered every wall she had built between science and soul. She swore she saw thanks. She swore she saw trust. Her tears fell freely now, hot against her cheeks, but she didn't look away. She wanted him to see her gratitude, too, for allowing her to be part of something so profound. The wolf lingered only a moment longer before nudging his pup upright. The little one stumbled, limping slightly, but managed to press against its father's side. The wolf lowered his head again, brushing against Emma's shoulder as he turned, a touch so subtle she almost thought she imagined it. But the warmth remained, a silent gesture of acknowledgement. And then, with the pup leaning close, the father wolf began the slow walk back toward the forest. His pace matched the pup's fragile steps, patient and deliberate, as though every second together was a victory. Emma stood, rooted to the spot, tears streaming, unable to move. She knew she had just witnessed something that defied explanation, something that would stay with her for the rest of her life. Behind her, no one spoke. The entire clinic stood in reverent silence, watching the pair disappear into the trees. Emma remained frozen at the doorway long after the wolves had vanished into the trees. The clearing outside was empty now, yet it pulsed with the weight of what had just unfolded. She pressed a trembling hand to her chest, her heart pounding as though trying to remind her that she was still alive, still human, and yet forever changed. Inside, her colleagues whispered in disbelief. Some wiped their eyes, others shook their heads, unable to comprehend the trust they had just witnessed. But Emma knew exactly what had happened. A boundary had been crossed, not by her, not by the clinic, but by the father wolf himself. He had chosen to step beyond fear, beyond instinct, and place his child's fate in human hands. Her thoughts returned to the twisted wire she had dropped into the tray hours earlier. The cruel snare, cold and unforgiving, represented the worst of humanity. And yet, in the same day, she had also seen the best of humanity, the choice to heal, to protect, to honor a bond that transcended species. The contrast toward her heart, but also filled her with hope. That night, Emma sat at her desk, writing in the clinic's logbook. Her handwriting wavered as she tried to capture the enormity of the day. A father's love carried his pup across the forest. A father's love broke steel and bent fear. A father's love trusted us, even when humans had caused the pain. She paused, tears spilling freely, and whispered into the quiet room. We didn't just save a life today. We were allowed to witness love. The cameras had captured everything, the arrival, the waiting, the reunion. But Emma knew no recording could truly capture the depth of that moment when golden eyes met hers and spoke a language no words could reach. Some stories live on because they shock us, others because they teach us. But this one, Emma realized, would endure because it touched something universal, the love of a parent willing to risk everything. If this story of courage and trust moved you, share it. Let the world remember that love, in all its forms, is the most powerful force that exists. And sometimes it comes to us on 4 legs, wrapped in fur, with golden eyes that will never be forgotten.